Well, you know what they say about men with big feet. I'm Aiden Mattis, and welcome to the Lore Lodge. If you were born around the time I was born, which was the late 90s, in fact, if you have been born really since the television era, you probably are familiar with Bigfoot as a concept. Now, I remember Bigfoot from everything from Scooby-Doo to Supernatural to, I think even SpongeBob had an episode involving Bigfoot. So he's kind of this ubiquitous folkloric creature throughout the United States and Canada. And for a long time, my assumption was that Bigfoot was kind of like an evil being who kidnapped children or who, was kind of like the Yeti and threw people off of mountains. But as I did more research into the subject, I discovered something quite interesting. Bigfoot, like us, seems to have nuance. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So right now I'm going to give you the 3 things that you should really know about Bigfoot. Number 1 is the backstory of where Bigfoot came from. You see, over the course of the 1900s, Bigfoot sightings became more and more common, and this could be partially due to a rise in just newspapers talking about it and it being an easy way to claim fame without any real evidence. Or it could be that due to people mining and foresting in places that the Native Americans really hadn't, maybe they were encountering some sort of previously undiscovered hominid creature. So when were those sightings? Well, there's really kind of unrecorded anecdotal sightings going back into the 1800s, but the first one I could find that I could corroborate was in 1904 when there were reports of a Bigfoot-type creature in the Sixes River area in the Coast Range of Oregon. But these were not described so much as the 7 to 8 foot tall, very hairy, very large ape man that we think of as Bigfoot as today. Instead, these were more wild men. They were just, large human beings who maybe didn't speak the languages that we're familiar with and were running around just kind of terrorizing people. Then in 1924, miners on Mount St. Helens, which you probably remember from the catastrophic 1980s eruption, they also said that they were being attacked by giant apes. Now, again, what does giant ape look like? We're all probably picturing gorilla, but that might not be what they meant. They also were being attacked and might not have gotten the best glimpse into what was attacking them. When the miners reported this and everyone spoke to local Native Americans, they were like, yeah, there's a tribe of wild men who live on that mountain. Like, did you not know this? You've been here for a while, you're mining. How were you not aware of the tribe? They're there. All of this, of course, was recorded by ethnologist George Gibbs in an 1865 survey on the tribes of the Northwest Territories of America. Now, of course, they had evidence. They had footprints and they had feces and all sorts of stuff that they were like, look, there's something going on here. And scientists, by and large, simply just kind of dismissed it as either a hoax or as something that just, they didn't really have an answer. Which tends to be what science does when there's not a good answer for something or it contradicts whatever the scientific community has decided is going on. They'll just say, oh, well, it's a hoax. In this case, it doesn't seem like a hoax because the Native Americans had stories of it before miners ever reported it. Moving forward in time a little bit, in 1958 in the Cascades, lumbermen and park rangers alike were discovering very large footprints that they couldn't really attribute to anything in particular. This got worse for them when they started to catch glimpses of large hominid creatures roaming about. In this case, however, they weren't behaving like wild men, they were just acting like regular humanoids, going about their business, picking fruits and rocks and berries. There wasn't really anything to worry about, so nothing was done. In 1967, in an attempt to scientifically prove the existence of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call him, 2 men, Joseph Krantz and Jeff Moldrum, from Washington State University and Idaho State University, used examinations of film footage from large bipedal creatures and morphological analysis of the footprints found nearby. So they were actually doing science. They were dismissed as crackpots by the rest of the scientific community. again, there's a trend here, you know? As a result of all of this, in 1970, a former Yeti hunter by the name of Peter Byrne established the Bigfoot Information Center, which I don't even know what that means. And in the 1980s, a U.S. Forest Service employee reported a set of large tracks from a humanoid in the Blue Mountain region of Oregon. Now, it was not disproven, but it was questionable. So when it comes down to it, most of the modern evidence for Bigfoot is hearsay, or there's a footprint here or a track there, but the scientific community as a whole seems to go into it not with curiosity, but rather with the idea that, well, if there's no obvious markers, then it must be a hoax, it must be fake. They have completely abandoned curiosity around these things. You know, the general belief is that there's no way Bigfoot could possibly exist, so we're just going to assume anything is a hoax. They don't really do testing. And when they do testing, I've seen some of it, and I remember watching movies on, like, testing the Bigfoot footprints, and they were like, oh, well, because this, you know, ridge line doesn't totally match what a human would, it can't possibly be real, it must be a plaster cast. And it's like, or maybe the morphology of the being that you're talking about is different, I don't know, maybe that's a possibility. But this is getting off topic. There's a couple other important things to understand here. So, according to David Dagling, a PhD in anthropology, a modern contemporary one, he suggests that petroglyphs depicting Bigfoot range from 500 to 1,000 years old, and on top of that, in one of Teddy Roosevelt's books, he recounts a story from somebody else about a Bigfoot. So that is not a story of Teddy Roosevelt himself, who we generally agree is a credible figure, considering he was president of the United States, and, you know, a rather good one at that. There is something called dream literature that is prevalent throughout the ancient world in the Middle Ages, where people will say, this appeared to me in a dream, or it was revealed to me, or something like that, to push across ideas that they were concerned would get them in trouble. I'm not saying that's what Teddy Roosevelt was doing here by saying that the story was given to him by somebody else and then he recorded it, but it's worth asking the question. So, the first thing you should know about Bigfoot is that he's been recorded by people across vast distances with very little communication with one another for well over 100 years. And you also have to keep in mind, you might ask, well, why are there no written accounts of Bigfoot before that? Why is it all oral? Why is it all somebody writes something down, goes and asks the natives about it, and the natives say, oh yeah, for sure. Well, it's because there weren't really that many written languages for Native Americans before 1825. I was having trouble finding any good examples of widespread Native American languages. I found that the Cherokee managed to write down their own language around the 1800s, and it was eventually accepted in 1825. But for the most part, you're dealing with pictographs and logograms and things like that. The second thing you need to know about Bigfoot is that, well, he's not exactly what you anticipate in Native American folklore. When you go and you talk to Native Americans who have Bigfoot as part of their culture and their story, what they will tell you a great percentage of the time is that Bigfoot is not, in fact, a corporeal figure. He's not a living, breathing creature like we are, like an ox is, like a bear is. Rather, he's kind of a not shapeshifter, but a dimensionally traveling protector creature. You see, he's an elder brother figure. He protects the Native Americans, he protects the tribes, he protects the nature. And so the people who are going to see harm come to them as a result of Bigfoot are not going to be just your average hiker. It's going to be somebody who chops down a forest and doesn't replant it. It's going to be somebody who mines all the coal out of a mountain and leaves the area surrounding it desolate. It's going to be somebody who builds a dam in a river that is going to have a lot of negative outcomes for the fish and the people who survive off that river. So Bigfoot is not going to just attack random people. In fact, he's probably going to protect you if something goes wrong. And with the missing 411 phenomenon, there are plenty of cases of children being carried off and cared for by what they referred to as large hairy men. They also have some common behaviors. For example, a lot of Native American tales tell of Sasquatch banging a stick on a nearby tree if you get too close to his territory to warn you to stay out. And interestingly, Non-natives have reported hearing this as well in areas where, well, when you go back and you talk to the natives, there's like, oh, well, that's a Bigfoot's territory. So just certainly interesting to consider all of that. Finally, I'd say one of the other important things to note about the Bigfoot tradition is how widespread it is. Natives across the country have tales regarding the Bigfoot. These include native communities such as the Nalakapamu, the Loom, the Cherokee, the Salishan speakers, the Natchez, and even more. The Iroquois have some. Basically every Pacific Northwest, the Dene. No matter where you look across the United States, especially in mountains and forested areas, you're going to have stories of the Bigfoot, of Sasquatch, and of course, he goes by many, 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 many names within all of these communities. Some of the names that Sasquatch will go by, or Sasquatch-adjacent creatures, will be, of course, Sasquatch, Simiquis, Stiaha, Quiahi, and the Skookum is referenced kind of in a lot of these tales, specifically in the Oregon tradition, but this more refers to a tribe of wild men than it does to the typical Sasquatch, which is interesting for a number of other reasons that we've gotten into in different videos. So, what is Sasquatch? Well, it's a semi-corporeal being that protects the wilderlands, that protects the native tribes, and that has existed in the tribal consciousness, as far as we know, for at least about 1,000 years. It's captured the minds of modern cryptozoologists, of Hollywood, and many others, and it's arguably, at its core, the most famous Native American monster. But that's not really what it is at all. It's not a monster. It's just something that we've misunderstood and mischaracterized for the sake of our own personal gain. I didn't mean to get deep. But anyway, if you like what we're doing here at the Lore Lodge, you can like this video, you can subscribe to the channel, you can share, you can hit the notification bell. Honestly, if you even take that link and you just copy it and you put it onto a Facebook post, that does a lot more than you could ever possibly think it does in the YouTube algorithm. And if you really want to support what we're doing, check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/thelorelodge. We've got tiers from $1 through $100, and we've recently launched a serial short story series. So, if you're interested in any of that, check it out. I'm Aiden Mattis, and thanks for stopping by the Lore Lodge.